Okay, welcome. Welcome to our Wednesday PracticePower coaching website. It is obviously the 25th of May. I am Coach Joe Lucas. I am the creator, founder, curator, if you will, of PracticePower. And what we want to do on these Wednesday webcasts is answer your question, provide you some value. Like to be here about 30 minutes or so. If we go a little longer, we can, right? If we've got some things happening. This is also an interactive webcast. So number one, we are recording it. Replay will be made available. Right now, we are hosting them on YouTube before we put them behind the firewall in PracticePower. So what we're going to do today, I want to give you an update on PracticePower, a very important update on where we are with the design development. And then obviously when we're done with it, there won't be all these updates. I want to go over time with you today. One of the things you've heard me talk a lot about is tactical and strategic time. And I want to add a third element of that, and I'll explain why in a little bit. In addition, we have some members that have some questions which they've submitted. One of them, a couple of them deal with the DOL, the Department of Labor regs that are now out, and a big part of my work is working clients through that, which we'll talk about that. And then if there's any follow-up questions, great. And then we'll call it a wrap, and I'll let you guys get ready for your Memorial Day weekend here. So, but before all that, and what I want to do real quick is give you all a little peek at what we're working on. This is like a 1-second thing, so hold on here. So this is basically going to be the new design of the front end of PracticePower. Once we roll it out, you'll see it's a very clean theme, very modern, and what's really great about this is it's going to play really, really well with all your mobile devices, iPads, Droid phones, everything like that, complete access. We're really excited about that. Just want to give you a little peek at what we're working on. This is also very important. If you're using PracticePower right now to do daily game plans, monthly game plans, and housing them inside of PracticePower, and then updating your business plans, I ask you, give it a couple days of not touching it. Right now, the developer, which is a lot of work, we have to change a lot of, we have to actually reformat all that stored content so that it right on the new theme, and if you start changing it, we may not catch it all. So we just want to freeze it right now. So just for a couple days, I'll come back to you all with a note via email when we're ready for it. You'll see the new site. When you go into PracticePower, you log in, you go to your dashboard, you'll know when you can start playing with the game plans again, because the dashboard and the theme will look totally different. Okay, so that'll be a bit of a heads up from that perspective. So just kind of keep up on that. Additionally, we will have a call next Wednesday, a webcast, so that'll be number 4. So enough of that. Let's now get into what I want to talk to you guys about, and then obviously we'll do the questions part. So back in 2008, 2009, when I developed iAdvisor and Advisor 2015, which were basically interpretations of Tim Ferriss's 4-Hour Workweek. I had said that an advisor, including myself in my business, really has only 2 types of time, what we call tactical time and strategic time. And just so you know, tactical time, and you're all experts at this, right? Marketing, client reviews, touch-base calls, financial planning, really working in the business, really running the business inside the business, right? Very, very tactical, right? Day in and day out. Which most typical advisors do. Strategic time was really broken up into 3 elements: working on yourself, working on your business, and then downtime. So when we say working on yourself, that's CE credits, learning something new, anything that would make you a better human being, right? Personal development programs, seminars, trainings, I guess due diligence meetings, depending on what was going on there, would all be considered working on yourself during strategic time. And then the second element was working on your business, right? So that would be, hey, business planning, right? So if you came out to Orlando the last couple of years, right? Business planning, working on your CRM, client segmentation, business budget. So anything that would improve the systemization of your business, that would also be considered in strategic time. And then the third piece was, downtime, right? Strategic time. So one of the things I put in there was downtime, getting away, vacation, right? And what I said was, what you really could do in strategic time is work on yourself, work on your business, and if you could do all three, that would be really, really neat. And for several years, that's exactly what I did. And that's exactly what a lot of my clients did, right? We really took strategic time and put it out there. Now, as a balance point, to give some of the new members here a perspective, we typically, again, this is typical, not knowing a lot about anybody's business here, but typically what I always recommend is 3 weeks out of the month, you be tactical, right? You see your clients, you work on your business, stuff like that. Then the last week, or the fourth week, you would be strategic. So we would not see clients, we would not do reviews, we would not do anything like that. We would work maybe on things or go on vacation or go take a trip or do what we need to do. That's what we used to happen. And what happened was that, and this is why I'm adding the third time now, you'll see, called renewal time. So here's a shift that I'm making, and I'm going to propose to everybody. The problem that I have found with strategic time concepts, it is so darn easy to just get sucked into project work. So working on the business, I'll travel here, but I'll spend 6 hours in front of the computer doing stuff. And by the way, I'm the one that's guilty of this. And when I talk to my other clients, my personal clients, I say, well, tell me what you do in strategic time. And I start to hear, well, it's project work, right? It's yeah, I may change venue, but I'm still really engaged in the business. I'm still really engaged in doing what I do. So I never get a chance to step back. And what I realized was doing strategic time, and so figure the math, right? 3 weeks a month, tactical time, that's 36 weeks, right? And then out of 52 weeks, right, it's chunky, right? We have a lot of time. The problem was it was work, very few pure off days. And so I realized that was not going to work, and so what I decided to do was make strategic time. So the new definition of strategic time is working on yourself and working on your business. Working on yourself, working on your business, purely. That's it, right? Renewal time is purely away from the business, right? So strategic time, can you do in the office? If you had to, yes. Tactical time typically is always in the office. Renewal time is definitely not at home, not in your normal environment, really getting away. I can't tell you how much renewal time you need. That's very personal. Myself, I'm going to make sure at least once a quarter I get at least a week of renewal time. I literally just got back late last night. I took 5 days of renewal time, met some friends in Myrtle Beach, played way too much golf, poorly, and but it was interesting is I didn't bring any of my stuff with me. I brought just my iPad, my iPhone. I didn't bring my computer with me. I didn't do a lot of that stuff. And I really, for several days, didn't really give up my business a lot of thought. And I thought I'd feel really guilty about that. But coming back, it really invigorated me, even that little break there. So what I would suggest all of you do is when we start thinking about time going forward, I want you to, again, mark out your tactical days in the office when you're going to be working purely in the business. Strategic time, whether it's every Friday, like for me, Fridays tend to be strategic, right? If it's on a holiday week. So I won't see clients then. Some strategic weeks to get projects done, but make sure, I think at a minimum, I think once a quarter, you've got to grab a pure renewal week and get out of Dodge and reset yourself. There's usually 4 months a year, and I forget what they are this year. I think this year they're June's one. I think March was one. I think August is one, and I think December is one. When you really almost have like 5 business weeks in there, and it'd be really easy to take some strategic time and some renewal time, and really just get some really good chunks of time to keep yourself engaged. You've got to remember this business, and I think this is really important. There's no retirement age. We're not like airline pilots, and there's mandatory this, mandatory that. And I think a lot of people end up hanging around their offices and their business, not really driving things. And you get caught up in this psychology of, I'm not where my goals need to be, so I feel guilty if I take time away, but I'm really burnt out. So what do? You come in, if you're burnt out, you tend to hang out in the business, right? You hang out in your office. And, that's not going to serve anybody really well. And you want to be very, very careful of that, okay? So I just want you all to, as you get ready, as another 3-4 weeks, as scary as this sounds, we are going to be into the third quarter. We'll be at the halfway point of 2016. Want to make sure you get, let's make sure we get a chunk of time to really just get some renewal time. I think the 4th of July is a great week. I think the 4th falls almost in the middle. I think it's a Tuesday, as a matter of fact. And that's just a throwaway week as far as I'm concerned. It's a great renewal week. So keep that in mind, okay? So let's get to some questions here because that's what this is all about. So we've got 4 on the board. John asked, with the DOL, Department of Labor, upon us, what strategies should we be looking at with annuity sales? Great question. So let me address the DOL first in global terms, and then I'm going to answer these very specific terms, okay? And Jerry, I do see your question, and I'll come back to you on that in a second. Okay. These regs are out, and they came out I think back in April, if I'm accurate with this. And let me say this right now: I've got clients at every major wirehouse, pretty much every major regional firm. We've got a ton of RAs in our practice here. And there's a lot of noise. There's the compliance people interpreting it. There's securities attorneys interpreting it. But until you're custodian, until you're broker-dealer, until you're the entity that is going to be the one in charge of actually executing this, until they come out with something definitive, it is still highly interpretational. And so we don't have anything yet. I've seen copies of things, but I have nothing definitive. And I don't believe there will be anything definitive until the third, fourth quarter, just because I think a lot of the firms are trying to figure out what to do, right? So with that being said, so I just want to make that comment from that perspective where there's a lot of silence, quite frankly, in the space that I see. I check in with every time I talk to a client, basically, I'm checking in with them to seeing, hey, do we have anything yet? Have you heard anything yet? Has anything been passed through? And the answer is no. So I think we're all in the wait-and-see mode, and that'll be just. But getting to John's question specifically, so as far as strategies, so right now, one of the things that we know will change, we just don't know how yet exactly, is that the annuity, if you want to use the word sales process, presentation process, explanation process with a prospect or client, is going to be very, very different. It just will be because of disclosures, right? We're also not sure if the quote-unquote the L shares will be alive and well next year. We don't know what's going to go away, right? So here's how I'm advising my clients. If you think an annuity would be appropriate for a client, this would be the year to do it, right? Number one, for them, from a features and benefits standpoint, the smart people that I talk to do not believe that you're going to have nearly the features and benefits and income riders and stuff like that on the new products as you do with the current products because of all the disclosures and just the math, right? So if you're thinking about an annuity for your client, this would be a good year. This would be the second, third, and fourth quarters would be great. And I think the third quarter particularly would be great. I've also, which is totally against what I've always believed, by the way, I've also recommended to take all the commission and fees up front. Don't trail it out because I think you're at risk of doing that, okay? So I think it has to be an upfront deal and before we get into all that. So if you're going to be doing annuity business, my advice based upon what I've talked to clients about is to go ahead and make that happen now, not put it off because I think it will be less attractive for both you and the client going forward, okay? So hopefully, John, that gives you the answers. So Greg asked, and I think Greg's on the call, so I'm going to see if I can go grab him in a second. What to say to prospects after you have been referred or introduced? So I'm going to see if I get Greg on the line here. He doesn't know I'm going to do this, so hopefully he'll be good. Greg, I just unmuted you, and I just want to get further clarification, or if you have a backstory that you'd like to share, so I can address this properly. So you're live on the line here. What do you mean when you say? What do you say to the prospect physically there in a letter, in an email? What exactly are you asking? Greg, you there? I guess he's just going to be quiet right now. So, oops, he needs to call in. Someone come back to you. So once you do that, I'll come back to you. All right, no worries. All right. So Tom asked, quick tip to restart after stepping away from PracticePower principles for a while. So if Tom means what I'll call my kind of concept, right? My principles. Let me see if I grab him real quick. He's here. Tom, are you live? Can you hear us? Okay, maybe not. No big deal. So, principles. Number one, let's go back to, again, what's the core here, right? Number one, morning ritual, right? Number two, daily game plan. Number three, monthly game plan. Number four, business plan. So here's what I would say. One of the reasons why we're changing PracticePower as a process is that when it was just a website, it was very static, right? In other words, if you didn't remind yourself to go in there and do a monthly game plan, if you didn't keep your business plan updated there, if it was very static, right? And unless I was doing tons of content, there would be not a lot of, membership was still good, it priced well, right? But it still wasn't very, it could have been so much more. So in the new version of PracticePower, which we're going to call PracticePower Academy, just so and you'll know when we roll that out, it's going to become more interactive. We have this going on here every Wednesday. We're going to be here, right, doing these kind of sessions. We'll have some message boards, and I'll be pushing stuff out to you guys that way. So the website and the content just becomes very dynamic. And that's what we want to do. So what I would say, Tom, is number one, basics, right? Which is always going to be morning ritual. The one thing I would always say if I'm asked, and I have been asked, what's the one thing an advisor can do? If I can only give them one thing that would make probably the biggest difference in their business and their life, I'm always going to say morning ritual. How you spend the first 30 to 60 minutes of every business day has a profound impact either way, both positively and negatively, quite frankly, on what you do. So I want to be very, very clear on that. Okay, so I think from a principle standpoint, get back to there. Once the website's updated, Tom, what I'd also recommend you do is go into the Business Planning Center and either A, update the plan if it's there, or B, grab templates, right, and let's get a plan on board. Let's get back and engaged into it. I think that's really important. And I see Greg is now here, so let me go grab Greg because he has a question I think we all deal with from time to time, which is how do we go ahead and basically deal with prospects when they call in. So let me see if I can grab him real quick. Greg, I'm going to give you a PIN you have to enter to get your phone unmute. #73#. If you would put that in your phone, #73#. You did, thank you. And now I'm going to grab you. All right, Greg, do we have you now?
Yeah, are you here?
Yeah, I hear you, and then I guess you can see me, so that's cool, right? So tell me about your question. So what to say to prospects after you have been referred or introduced?
So I'm also a CPA and a financial planner, so I'm not necessarily overly salesy. So let me start with that. So
okay.
Typically this has happened several times where you've got a client invited me over for dinner at his house. And he said, "Listen, I'm inviting another couple. Hey, they're well-to-do. They're who knows?" And so you come over and you're having cocktails and going into dinner and my client will just say something generic like, "Oh, Greg's been handling our stuff and, for quite a few years and we're really happy with him. And, Greg does, financial planning or whatever." And then he kind of stops and the client's just kind of like, "Oh," and then the subject changes. And I don't want to dive into any launch into rather any kind of sales kind of conversation. Right. I want to be kind of like cool. Yep. But how do you kind of bend that conversation into something where maybe we can get to maybe meet separately, talk about their finances?
Right, great question. So first off, I'm going to leave the line unmuted too, by the way, so that way if we have to follow up. first off, in some of these scenarios, it may not be appropriate, right, to even dive. So even if you had the perfect opening, it may not make sense to dive right in there, right, because it just may not feel right. And whether you're salesy or not, it's a question of appropriateness. What I think you really want to get out of something like that is, in a social setting, is to let the prospect or the non-client who's in the room, right, if you will, how far do they want to take the conversation, right? Do they want to sit there and ask you some questions and pepper it, or do they shift and turn it also? What I would recommend, and this is the way I've always liked to do this, is after that dinner is over the next day, right? What I would do is circle back to the host, which sounds like in this case would be your client, right? And say, hey, look, first I want to thank you for inviting me. It was really great. Loved meeting so-and-so. Did they say anything after I left or, during dinner or anything like that, right? You kind of get a little feedback. And then the follow-up, here's the most important question. Do you think they would welcome, or do you think it would be appropriate for me to reach out to them and see if they wanted to grab a phone call or grab a half hour of my time, an hour of my time, or something like that, right? Because my sense of what you do, like a lot of us do, is, we do a complimentary consultation, right? There's no charge or anything like that. So do you think they'd be open to something like that, right? If they are, then it's just a question of getting your client to give you their information, right? Ideally email, by the way. So here's the best way that I like doing it. If you can get their email address, then it's a quick subject line, hey, refer to you by client. Hey, hi, this is Greg. It was very nice to meet you at the dinner, blah, blah, blah. It sounded like you had some questions around things. Love to grab you for a half hour on the phone or come in with a cup of coffee, let us know, right? And just shoot me back a note and let me know if you want to do that, right? So something very soft that way. That's the best way. I've never found a lot of success in what I call going pitchy during dinner meetings, unless the prospect wants to, right? But even then, so let's say the prospect is different, Greg. Let's say hey, well, yeah, I heard so many great things about so-and-so, and you do a great job for them, and we're at this firm here, and we're not really happy. And even if they did that with you, I would say, you know what, that's great. Probably not a conversation we want to have here during dinner. Would you want to come in next week, grab an hour, no fee, and just talk about your situation? Would you be open to that, right? Because what you never want to do in a social setting is do what I call a half story, where you give them a little information where they can form an opinion, right? But without getting enough information to give them proper guidance. So I hope that answers some of your questions.
But one other corollary to that,
sure.
That is that sometimes clients will ask like, hey, well, what do you think the economy is going over the next 6 months, or maybe some stupid question about what's the hot stock to pick, and
right.
Clients don't really know what the right question to ask, and certainly this isn't our game. We don't pick stocks, kind of get into like this conversation about long-term investing and all that without being too put off. I mean, I think that a lot of times we'll get those kind of questions too, and you don't want to put down the client, but they're kind of stupid questions.
You want to pivot it, and I know the way most of my clients would answer that, which is 6 months. I have no idea. Nobody does, because if we knew, I'd be running a very multi-trillion-dollar hedge fund, right? So I think it's always the question of, well, nobody really knows for sure, right? And then I think you can pivot, and so nobody really knows for sure, and what I focus on is planning my client's goals, right? So you can take that and, right? So nobody really knows and pivot. So and is always going to be a pivot word to go change subjects, right? Answer, pivot. Make sense?
That's great, because I do tell them, hey, no one knows. My crystal ball's murky, but I like to pivot. Thank you very much for that.
No, that's cool. Excellent. So glad to have you here. So let's go on to, and I see we have some other questions. So Greg's good. Tom, I think I handled your question. Hopefully I was right. Jerry, I'm going to come back to you in a second with the tactical strategic. But I want to get to Rene, because Rene has a great question, one that actually we've been covering a little bit in some of my coaching work, which is, what are your thoughts on AUM management and insurance commissions being commoditized? more and more due to, again, DOL, pricing pressure, robo-advisor. I mean, there's a lot of things that are coming down the road. And first, I want to see if Renee's actually here. He's gonna catch it up on replay. Looks like he's not here, so I'll go ahead and make my comments on it. Look, I mean, I think that AUM fees are going to come down. I mean, it just, you don't have to even be a bright person to realize that, you're going to see leakage down. Now, how far down? I mean, I can make the argument that 75 to 50 basis points will probably be typical in 10 years, if not sooner, which I know scares, excuse my language, scares the crap out of some of you on this webcast. Insurance commissions, that's a little bit different, and I think annuities are going to be definitely affected. Life insurance, I mean, quite frankly, and I don't mean to say this, from an arrogant standpoint, most of you don't know what you get paid on life cases anyway until you get the check, because it's a big bad black box of target premiums and this and that, right? So I think life insurance is not going to be really effective, quite frankly. I think for sure we're going to see commissions come down on the annuity products. I just don't see how they don't. I mean, the math is just going to be what it is. The AUM management, like I said, I do think it could down. However, in a lot of the models that I've studied, here's kind of what happens. Is planning fees. I really think that when I look at it, if I were advising somebody today that were coming, if I had a blank sheet of paper with somebody and said, look, Joe, I'm coming into business, or I'm going to blow up my business, and I want a blank sheet of paper, what's the model, right? I'm going to say we're going to be financial planning centric. We're going to be planning first. Whether we charge 500, and by the way, when I say planning, I don't mean freebies. I don't mean giving it away and hope we get the assets. I mean charging a fee. I've got clients at firms, I've got clients at major wirehouses charging, $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 for financial planning fees. Now, they hit the grid, and you end up with, 40% of it, unfortunately, but the fact is we're conditioning our clients to pay, right, for financial planning. So I'm going to say we're going to be planning centric. So you're going to get a financial plan, then some sort of annual retainer to update the plan and do things like that. So where the AUM fees are going to be diminished, I think you can make up a lot of that with planning fees. Maybe not on a dollar for dollar basis, but enough. Okay. So here's the other thing that's going on with commoditization, from Renee's question. Yes, fees are coming down, but you also have to remember the next 5 or 10 years, there's going to be a lot less of us in this industry. The average age is 58. So put it 5 years forward, the average age is 63, right? For the most part. And when the DOL goes through, you're going to have to go get your fee-based license. I think it's what, 66, 65? Otherwise, you're not going to be able to run that money. So, I mean, I know, just talking to my clients at the major firms and even some of the big independent firms, you got an advisor who's 30, 40 years in the business, in their late 60s, early 70s, who are pretty much transactional based. You think they're going to go ahead and turn on their business? I highly doubt it. So I think when you'll have fees come down, I think there's a lot less competition. I think if you're planning centric, you have a tremendous advantage, right? And I had a client that was at the FPA in Dallas a couple days ago, as a matter of fact, and one of the speakers there, Mike Kexis is his name. His whole thing is that everybody's freaked out about these robo-advisors, and I'm, my advice to everybody not to be freaked out, because first off, they're going to be such a small percentage of the market, and the market that they're getting is the people that wouldn't qualify to be your client anyway, right? They just won't. Too small of an asset base. What I do think we'll have, and we're seeing this play out at Morgan Stanley, and I think UBS just did a deal, and LPL's got their deal. Each one of you will have access to an automated investment platform to piggyback alongside of your other platform. So you'll have another tool in the toolbox, which I think will be a great advantage, quite frankly, going forward from that perspective. So where I do think there'll be some commoditization, I do think, and I said this at a meeting in Puerto Rico earlier this year, I think our industry is going to enter a renaissance. And I think if you know what to look for, it's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity because of the number of advisors who will be leaving. And I do think it's going to be, it's going to become like this. If you've got your act together and you've got a good game plan and you know what you're doing and you're not trying to be a salesperson, right? You're really being a professional. I think this business at some levels gets easier, not more difficult. I know we like to look at it as difficult, but you got to remember something. The people that are running around right now freaking out about DOL and all the jazz going on are the ones that tend to be more transactional oriented, not relationship oriented. So if you're planning centric and you're relationship centric and you're fee-based centric, I think this business will actually get better down the road once we get over this hump. Okay, so I want to cover that with everybody. Jerry, let me see if I can grab Jerry real quick because he has a question, and then I'll see if I can answer it. So Jerry, you're live. Can you hear me? Can we hear you? Maybe not. Okay, so anyway, so Jerry's question, which you wrote in here, was having trouble distinguishing tactical and strategic. Okay, so let me give you a very tight definition of tactical. Tactical is what most advisors do every day. You come in, you do your to-do list, you make your calls, you do your financial plans, you meet with your clients, you meet with prospects. To use Michael Gerber's, right, E-Myth, you're totally in the business, right? You're running, you're doing it, right? Always, or in most cases, at your office. Strategic time is when, quite frankly, you don't see clients. You're not doing touch-base calls. You're working on the business. So sometimes that might be in the office. Sometimes it might be at home office. Sometimes it may be, somewhere else, right, at their place. And that's where you work on systems. Like I know, Jerry, for example, I know you're integrating e-money, right? So that would be, okay, so I'm going to integrate e-money. That's a strategic project, right? I'm going to come up with a planning agreement. That's working on the business. That's a strategic project. So anything that betters the business from a project standpoint, we consider strategic. Also, what we would consider strategic is, working on yourself. So if there are CE credits you have to get, designations, going to conferences. I know you came out to see me, in Orlando in business planning, right? That was strategic time. When I came and visited you in your office and your team, that was a strategic day. We call it a partner strategic day, right? Working on things, right? You're working on your website now. That's a strategic project. So that's how I would define things, between tactical and strategic. Tactical is more regular day, client-facing, work that way. Strategic is more working on yourself, okay, working on the business, all right? So I'm over here because I've got on the screen, so real quick. It looks like I've got all the questions handled. Let me just see if I missed one. Maybe one down here. Okay. So Greg does have Greg gets a 2-for-1 right now. So go ahead, Greg. Give me your question. Another referral introduction question. Go ahead.
So say you meet with a client and say, hey, I have a neighbor friend, and I think they might be a good prospect for you. Here's his name and phone number and email, and they kind of leave it at that. And so what do you feel is some of the best ways, kind of low key but professional, to kind of approach this prospect?
Right.
Yeah, there you go.
All right, cool. So the first thing is, so if I get their name, why my client thinks they would be a good prospect for me, and I got their email address. So if I got those 3 things, the first thing, hey, great, thank you so much. Would it be okay if I, not to be CC'd, but I CC'd you on the note I send them? Would you be okay with that? And if they're not okay with that, then is it really an introduction referral, right, at that point, if they're not willing to do that? And they say, and typically they'll say, oh yeah, of course. I say, great. When I send it out, could you just flip back a real, hey, just a real quick note back to him that, just introducing us, right? So it's not awkward or things like that. And most clients will say yes to that. So once I have that done, I'm going to put in there, so the subject line is going to be, referred by Joe Lucas, right? So first off, so that way, because they're not going to know who I am. I'm gonna put who the client is. So like for me, referred by Joe Lucas, and then I'm gonna start the thing off. Hey, I want to introduce myself. My name is Bob. Bill said that you basically, Bill said you had some questions, and I'd love to answer the questions for you. Would you be open to a quick phone call? Now, the reason why I say a quick phone call, not let's meet or let's get together, I want to make it, I want to give them an easy, I want to make it easy, right? So it's a lot easier to agree to a phone call than to a meeting. Number two, they may not be qualified, and I may not want to give them an hour of my time, right? So I always will go that way first, right, with an email. I'm always going to pivot to a phone call. I'm going to get my client to loop in if possible, right? Because if I can get an endorsement there, I want to take it if I can. Quite frankly, the other things I'll do, depending on who they are, Greg, is I'll check them out on LinkedIn, right? So again, if you're referred to a professional. So one thing I think everybody needs to do, by the way, when you get a referral, is Google that person and see how much data you can gather on them. Facebook page, LinkedIn profile, whatever they got going on, right? You know, arrest records, right? I have no idea. The more you can feel like you know this person, the more effective you're going to be when you reach out to that person. So, Greg, in your case here, let's just say hypothetically they're also on LinkedIn, right? I'm going to ping them on LinkedIn for a connection, right?
Yep.
Because what they're going to do, and then here's the other thing is, by doing this via email, obviously there'll be a link back to my website, so they can check me out that way, which is my storefront. I've often said that. And LinkedIn, granted I may not have any recommendations or anything like that because of compliance, but they can see my background, what I do, things like that. They're going to feel more comfortable. So I've always liked the idea. Even to this day, I get clients that are on a coaching call. I have one-on-one with somebody. Hey, my buddy over here, he wants to talk to you. I said, great. You give me his phone number, I'll take it. But what I really want is his email address, right? So kick that to me. Why? Because I always want to make the first communication electronically. Number one, it's convenient. Number two, it's appropriate, and it's respectful. I'm not calling them and demanding 5 minutes of their time because I happen to be calling them. It's just, to me, a very elegant way of doing it. Okay?
Thanks, Joe. Great.
All right, cool. Excellent. All right, no, my pleasure. All right, so a couple more questions. I see everybody's getting to use the thing here. So, all right, so I think, is there a way to So, question on the follow-up call daily game plan. So apparently Rene is here now. So let me go grab him. Rene, you're live. How are you?
Good, Joe. Good to hear you.
Good. Yeah, good to hear your voice too, my friend. What's going on?
Hey, I've been trying to come up with a very basic follow-up system, without being an expensive Salesforce type of scenario. So I was wondering, on the daily game plan, either now or going forward, say I had to call Joe Smith and I got his number on my daily game plan. Would there be a way to simply roll that over to the next day if I had to push it out or that type of thing?
Well, if you're talking on PracticePower, and I don't know if you're talking about that daily game or any daily game plan builder that you can build. One of the ways that I've seen clients do this, so I have clients that have taken kind of a concept of the daily game plan on PracticePower. In fact, the Excel file's there if you look on their game plan builders. And what they'll do is they've created a very tight one-pager. So what would be on a one-pager? The must-call list, right? The follow-up list, things like that. And some of them will actually do it in a Google sheet, which is pretty cost-effective. And what they'll do is they'll just basically copy that sheet over every day, delete what needs to be deleted, or rewrite what needs to be rewritten, right? But keep the stuff that needs to stay, and they'll roll it that way. That might be, if you don't want to get into a CRM or like Salesforce, anything expensive, that can be a way to do it. But quite frankly, if you don't care about industry specific, there's like High-Rise. There's a lot of almost basically free online CRM systems. And when I say free, I'm talking like $20 a year type stuff, right? They're very basic, simplistic, but that might be a way for you to kind of take a look at it also. I don't know if that helps. I don't know if that answers the question or not, but that it may be better to co-opt something that's already there than to build from scratch.
So you mentioned a high rise as one of those that are pretty.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's high rise. I mean, there's several out there that are really made for web startups, and they're made by young web startups, right? And they're very cost. I mean, I'm talking like some of these are like $5, $6, $7 a month. It's like ridiculous. Zoho's one. That may be a little bit more expensive, but not the Salesforce and the red tail type expensive, right? From that perspective, and Zoho plays with Google Docs and Gmail really well. It's a real tight integration. I do have a couple clients that use that, and very cost effective also, right? So I'm just saying, I know and sometimes you want to kind of create things, but the problem is if you don't remember to go roll it over, right? It doesn't happen, and then we kind of get caught. I'd still say go get something that would work really well that way.
Okay, and then one last question. I'll let you get on to others.
Oh, Greg says Wealthbox is another one to check out.
Okay, because I want to transition to more of a fee-based planning model. Do you know of, or does anyone online know of, any third-party money managers that really embrace that approach and help you integrate it into your practice?
So you're talking about like a TAMP, like a turnkey asset manager?
Yeah, that also embraces the fee-based, getting a planning fee up front.
No, most of them do. I mean, that's kind of it's more commonplace today than before. In fact, I don't know if a third-party manager would have two separate functions. One's running the money, one's a planning fee. It's two different areas. So you're talking about custodian or a broker-dealer, or are you talking about a money manager?
A money manager. I guess I could go to my preferred money managers and see what they have to support such a transaction.
Yeah. I mean, I would start there because again, we're not walking on Mars here. This is kind of common stuff. So I would say check that out. Check with your current vendors if you like them, right, and to see if they have any challenges with that. I wouldn't imagine they would, quite frankly, and go from there.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. All right. Cool. All right. So see if there's anything else on the board real quick before we wrap up. Great. Got that. So that's good. I'm showing Clearboard. I think we've got everybody kind of covered for today, which I appreciate this. So we did record this. The replay will be made available. We'll be back here next Wednesday after the holiday, noon Eastern. Again, could go up to an hour. I think we're about 42 minutes here, so we're good to go. I don't see any other questions, so I'm letting everybody kind of get back to their week. Hey, enjoy the long weekend, and I'll see you all in about 7 days. And with that, we are out. See you all in 7.